Big deal, HM, maybe you would like to come? But today we have a very special guest, a personal friend, Godmother, the fairy godmother.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Please, have a seat.
Of course.
Now, we all know how fairy tales have changed our lives and make them more interesting. But how exactly did those stories get their starts? What sort of spices are added to the soup of life to make it more savory? What is the secret sauce that makes us crave that deliciousness? The answer? Fairy godmothers. And the blessings they provide. How do these miracle workers make the magic happen? Where do they draw their inspiration from? All these questions and more shall be answered tonight. So, Godmother, first of all, big thank you for coming to our humble gathering tonight.
Oh, it was no trouble at all, Henry. May I call you Henry?
No. By contract, all my guests are to refer to me as Big Deal HM or just Big Diddy, but please continue.
Very well, Big Deal HM. It's my pleasure to come to your little show. I do so enjoy being able to sit and relax instead of just poofing in and out all the time.
Now, seeing as we only have so much time, I'd like to jump right into these questions that our audience sent in via text message.
I'm ready if you're ready, Big Diddy.
All right. And our first question is, why are you still single?
Wow, that's kind of a personal question.
For our audiences. This is a singles word, Kabiri.
Okay, I'll give you that. Well, if you really want to know, the reason is that fairy godmothers, our job is so demanding. We have to be ready at a moment's notice in case a princess is born, or she's in dire peril, or her true love is under some sort of spell. Whatever the case may be, is we have to be available. And so I'm not allowed to have my own happily ever after until I retire.
Aww.
But I do have a couple of fairy godfathers that I think are the bee's knees that are in my repertoire.
Well, we certainly wish you the happiest with that. I'm sure you will all agree with me in wishing a true happily ever after. It is worth waiting for. Am I right? I am right. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, settle down. Settle. Thank you. All right, our next question is, how does your magic work?
Well, fairy godmother magic comes from happily ever afters and true love. Therefore, the more princesses that we bless are able to go and find true love and have those happy endings fuel our magic, and that way we are able to continue on.
Oh,
Yes.
Excellent. I'm sure that will help all of us a little bit be more loving, knowing that an entire race is depending on our being loving and giving.
It's true, without you we die.
So, let's move on to our next question. What is one of your most memorable blessings?
Oh my goodness, there are so many of those. Oh, one of my favorites actually came when I was still an apprentice fairy godmother. I was not yet allowed to bless an actual princess, but a lord and his wife had recently had this beautiful little baby girl, and I was assigned to give her a blessing. And so I went to their manor, beautiful little daughter, all smiles and giggles, and because this was one of my major achievements, I decided, long before what I was going to say, I was going to bless this little princess to be able to communicate with poise, grace, and clear diction to better her station in life. And yet, as I was leaning over little Ella, tapping my wand to her beautiful forehead, I happened to see two little rodents cross the floor. And what came out of my mouth was, I bless you to communicate with mice! Unfortunately, blessing blessings cannot be recalled, just as words cannot be unsaid. I was thus reassigned, and they promised to send a real fairy godmother to help out Princess Ella. Well, but it didn't work out for her, because later when her evil stepmother tried to lock her in a tower, her little mice friends that she could talk to got her the key, and so she was saved. And so really, I provided the happily ever after.
What an entertaining story!
Magic is rather funny that way. I should point out that a fairy godmother cannot repeat a blessing. This is something not many people know, but that we have to be creative every time we bless a little prince or princess. It would lack any sort of imagination to do a generic blessing, like signing the same things in everyone's yearbook. You rock, rock on, keep it up. Like, be blessed with being beautiful and wonderful and perfect. It lacks flair.
We all have those friends, don't we?
Yes, and there's also this fairy godmother contract that ensures that every blessing is individualized. We once had a case where there were two princesses with identical blessings that met each other. It was one of the most horrible things ever. We don't speak of it often. But you just have to be careful with fairy godmother magic. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Let's continue.
It's fine, I ramble all the time. Well, going back to your contract. I do understand contracts. Contracts and lawyers, you gotta love them. Now, I have it on very good authority that you brought your magic wand with you, is that correct?
But of course. What sort of fairy godmother would I be without my trusty wand?
May I?
You may.
It doesn't appear to be working. Is it broken?
No, this wand has served me flawlessly for the last 3 centuries. However, the wand only works for those that are fairy godparents. Otherwise, you're just like a fool waving around a stick. Not that I would ever know about anything like that. But I promise it's as good as ever.
Good. Well, it was worth a shot. Moving on. Someone asked, how can I get my own fairy godmother?
That's a good question. I would check out Craigslist, eBay, or Amazon. You never know what you're going to find there.
Very good suggestion. Short, sweet, to the point. Can't ask for more than that. Now, here's a question I know everyone in the audience is waiting for. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. What is the difference between a fairy and a witch?
Well, what's the difference between a cat and a dog, Big Diddy? That's kind of an insulting question. Who asked that? Fairies and witches are completely different. For an example, all that a fairy lives and strives for is to bring joy, happiness, and happy ever afters. Witches, you can never really tell what's on their mind. Not to mention they're a bit bland. I mean, they typically travel by broom or bubble. I mean, we have the instant teleportation of being fairies, and we can fly. So really, there's just no comparison.
Now, we can't all come and go by bubble now, can we? You've been so helpful thus far, Byrie. We only have a few questions left.
All right.
The next one. So many good questions. So much participation. Is it hard to ensure your blessings always right?
It's not hard at all, Big Diddy, because if you have to remember my story about little Ella, they don't have to rhyme. Typically when you're impressing a very powerful king, or there's a huge crowd gathered, you will make them rhyme for that dramatic flair. But as long as you are a fairy godmother, you have the power to make it work with or without a rhyme. In fact, I think at the end of our interview, if the audience would like, I will give a demonstration. That work? Would you volunteer for that at the time?
Oh, I would love to.
Excellent, it's a deal. Let's continue.
You can please bibbidi-bobbidi do whatever you choose. I'm sure we'd all like to see magic firsthand. I think we're all agreed on that one. So, with that special treat in mind, we have one final question.
All right.
fairies good while others are evil? Do you have a choice in the matter? Looks like someone's an overachiever and stuck in 2 questions.
Well, you can't blame someone for trying, I suppose. However, that question, or questions, actually have a similar answer. A fairy godparent, or any fairy for that matter, chooses to be good or bad. It just depends on where you want to get your fuel. Magic fuel, so to speak. As I explained, fairy godmothers, we get that from true love and happily ever afters. Wicked or evil fairies will get that from those that are jaded, or dumped, or bitter. Just all those negative feelings of those that don't get a happily ever after. And I have to tell you that they are both equally powerful. Because for every happily ever after, there is always somebody, without exception, that doesn't get that happily ever after with those same people. And it can turn very, very ugly. However, as I have spent many, many decades giving blessings and making sure that my fairy godchildren had their happily ever afters, I can kind of understand where these poor evil fairies are coming from. It is so rare for me to get so much as a thank you card for what I do.
Aww.
Exactly. How much work would it take to send a nice little invite to a wedding for a princess that I saved her little size 2 tushy from some horrible evil? Would that really take that much effort?
I don't think so. Do you think so, audience?
No.
Oh, and don't even get me started on those moments when someone gets upset at you because a blessing doesn't turn out how they planned it. I once had a princess that I blessed with a voice that could charm the birds out of the trees, and her parents were so happy. And then 20-some-odd years later, I'm getting angry phone calls and hate mail from the Aviation Society and from forest rangers that birds within earshot of Princess Fiona were exploding every time she sang. It was not my fault. I'm telling you, this job is a lot more stressful than people realize. You think that I could have a little bit of gratitude, a little bit of thanks, well done. But no, it's always, Kabairi, another princess has been born, you need to go bless her. Or Kabairi, so-and-so from the such and such kingdom is upset at your last blessing. And it just goes on and on. And I have lost so much sleep trying to take care of these fairy godchildren that don't even ever remember me. That I've developed ulcers. I lose so much sleep. Do you see these bags under my eyes? These weren't here. I don't know what to do anymore. It's just driving me crazy.
That does sound stressful.
Oh, you don't even know about stress. Imagine trying to keep a princess safe when she is determined not to do what I tell her to do. How often is it that you see a princess that you tell her one thing she cannot do, or she should not do, and she makes sure that she does it? They are very disobedient little children, no matter their age. And I've really been thinking that I need a break from all this. I have got to have a career change. I've just got to take a break and step back from all this fairy godmothering and everybody requiring everything from me all the time and never getting anything back. They're little emotion sponges. Vampires, I tell you. Excuse me.
Well, that does sound like it's for the best. So, instead of being a fairy godmother, what are you choosing as your next career change?
Oh, I'm actually really excited, and I'm glad that you guys all get to be here for this announcement. I made the courageous decision to follow after one of my heroes. I'm sure you've all heard of her. She's very famous. Maleficent, the mistress of all evil. Oh, I can't even tell you what an inspiration she's been. Henceforth, I am done being Kabairi, the fairy godmother. I will now be Kadori, the calamitous, the newest evil fairy godmother to walk or fly this land. And for that blessing you wanted, I bless you to have the lisp of Sid the Sloth. And you all better beware. If you are not working on dating and creating happily ever after, you are mine.
Well, I have no idea what that blushing meant. Seemed a little